I learned many new words while traveling through Latin America. Curiously, the most interesting word wasn't in Spanish. Hyperinflation. During my first week in Argentina, I withdrew $200 and was shocked to receive 2 stacks of bills that made me feel like a money launderer. I left the building burdened with a sense of paranoia and walked home as fast as I could. Before I arrived, a friend told me to use a money transfer service for a better rate. The official rate at the ATM was $1 to 800 pesos. The money transfer service offered $1 to 1200 pesos. I noticed most restaurant menus had their prices written with a pen instead of printed on the paper. This was to make it easier to change prices according to the constant inflation. I stayed in Buenos Aires for a week and went to a coffee shop for a cappuccino that cost 1800 pesos. Then I left for Patagonia and returned to Buenos Aires 2 weeks later. The same cappuccino at the same coffee shop was now 2300 pesos. My freelance work has been much lighter in recent months, but I could still afford the 500 peso increase. This was not the case for the average Argentinian whose salary doesn't increase in proportion to inflation. Entire life savings become worthless in a few months. I often see people searching through trash and homeless people sleeping on the street. It's nowhere near as bad as Portland or San Francisco, but it's enough of a reminder that this is a country going through an economic crisis. I reconnected with an American woman I met back when I lived in Colombia. Rebecca was 28 years old, born in Los Angeles, and spent her teenage years in Nebraska. She began traveling the world by the time she was 20, living in China, Vietnam, Georgia, Turkey, and now Argentina, where she quickly met the love of her life. I was skeptical when she said Alberto was her fiancé when they met only 2 months ago. At the same time, I didn't know Rebecca very well. She was a friend of a friend I met once at a comedy club in Medellin. It wasn't my place to express skepticism of her choices. She said she already let one soulmate get away and wasn't about to let that happen again. She recounted horror stories of ex-boyfriends from her past. One was a Turkish man she met in Istanbul. After breaking up with him, he told her landlord she was a prostitute and was using the apartment to receive clients. The landlord confronted her, much to her confusion and humiliation. She told him to check the security cameras to confirm her innocence. The only male she brought into the apartment was her dog, Dylan. I was impressed she traveled the world with her dog, who she adopted while volunteering at an animal shelter. It was easy to get a dog into Argentina. Her friends who moved to Indonesia had to sedate their dogs, smuggle them through their carry-on bags, and bribe customs and security. I met Rebecca and Dylan for coffee that day. She warned me not to pet him because he'd probably bite me. She thinks his previous owner abused him. She was currently working on a children's book about Dylan traveling the world, trying different foods. I asked if the book rhymed. She said no. Some of the foods were in Vietnamese and Russian, and rhyming would be too difficult. Rebecca was rail thin, had long chestnut brown hair, and exuded a dynamic energy. She had a degree in criminal psychology, which she finished in half the time. She convinced whoever was in charge at her university to put her on a 6-month track with online classes. She finished her degree while teaching English in Chengdu, China. Afterwards, she took a copywriting course and landed in the niche of dating psychology. After a few years of freelancing while traveling, she decided she wanted to work in the medical field as a physician's assistant. This meant she needed to go to medical school, which meant she needed to take out student loans since she was American, and she was not thrilled about this. She was also a freelance photographer and wanted to start a festival clothing line with a seamstress she met in Vietnam. On top of all these ambitions, she was planning her wedding. Rebecca was frustrated. She loved an Argentinian man, but had no desire to live in Argentina for 3 years until her fiancé graduates. Alberto was 34, a former actor, and currently studying psychology. He had never left Argentina before. Rebecca wanted to travel through Asia and eventually move to Portugal with Alberto. She had a dilemma, since traveling meant leaving him in Argentina for a few months, but it also meant he could watch her dog while she was away. She wanted to be with him, but she also wanted the freedom to travel. He wanted to be with her, but he had obligations that kept him where he was. There was also a large income gap between them. 1,000 pesos was nothing to her, but a lot for him. Her frustration reached such heights that she accidentally sprinkled salt instead of sugar in her coffee. Rebecca's apartment was in the neighborhood of Villa Crespo. Foreigners were allowed a maximum 6-month lease, and she paid her rent 3 months at a time, all in cash. With the current rate of hyperinflation, rent day must look like she robbed a bank. Her rent cost $500 per month, utilities included. She had her cash delivered, which I've never heard of before. Even though her apartment came fully furnished, Rebecca bought knickknacks, plants, fashionable throws, and plenty of dog accessories for Dylan. She planned on building a partition for the balcony and wanted to get a movie projector for her bedroom. Of all the apartments I've lived in, all of which were fully furnished, I never once decorated. I got extra bedding in New York City for the long cold winters, and a mosquito net in Vietnam because it was necessary, but I never bought so much as an extra coffee mug. My family came to the United States when I was 4 years old. I grew up in an apartment where all the furniture was purchased secondhand. I still have fond memories of going to discount stores and yard sales with my father, looking for gently used cookware and other home items. Once there was enough money to buy a house, we left everything behind and bought all new furniture because this was the home that mattered. Perhaps that's what I'm doing now, never bothering to nest until I have the nest itself and someone to share it with. One night, I went out to dinner with Rebecca and her friends. We went to an Italian restaurant and I accidentally ordered an Asian dish. Like most Asians, I have a slight lactose intolerance. I can't handle heavy, creamy sauces with lots of cheese. I either feel ill soon afterwards or I can't finish the dish at all because it's too rich for my palate. At first I ordered seafood spaghetti, but the waiter apologized that they were out of seafood for the evening. So I ordered pork-filled ravioli cooked with vegetables and oyster sauce. It didn't occur to me this was the Asian oyster sauce I knew so well. I thought there was a special Italian sauce made with oysters that I didn't know about. I laughed at my blunder once my meal arrived. We ordered provoletta for the table, which was melted provolone cheese. Rebecca ordered lamb ravioli swimming in a cheesy, creamy sauce. I tried a bite of both dishes. They were delicious, but I couldn't possibly eat an entire serving. Argentina has the second largest Italian population outside of Italy. Millions of Italians immigrated here in the 19th century, which profoundly shaped the country's culture. One of my friends said, "Argentinians are just Italians who eat a lot of steak and drink mate." After dinner, we went to a bar. I don't drink alcohol, but I wanted to continue socializing. The bar was located in San Telmo. My Argentinian friends warned me not to live in this neighborhood or go there alone at night. Well, I was with a group of 8 people, so I felt safe. The bar was decorated like a library, with bookshelves, painted portraits, and dark wood furniture. My friends ordered beers and a bottle of white wine. I had a bottle of water. One of Rebecca's friends was from Sao Paulo. I told him I was heading there soon, and he said he felt sorry for me. He preferred Buenos Aires to Sao Paulo. He thought his hometown was much too dangerous. There was an area downtown called Crackland, and I could guess why. But still, I looked forward to Brazil. There was a quote on the wall that read, Outside of a dog, a book is a man's best friend. Inside of a dog, it's too dark to read, by Groucho Marx. I pointed this out to my friends, and we all laughed. There was an abstract painting next to it, showing a thick, watercolored line followed by a trail of small dots. Rebecca saw a dog's tail and dirt tracks. Alberto saw a knife with droplets of blood. I saw a pen with ink splotches. I looked around the room and loved the atmosphere. Two young men who looked about 18 were deep in conversation at a table. Two older women who looked around 60 were deep in conversation at another table. Some couples were cuddling and kissing in booths. Everywhere was the sound of friends laughing and enjoying themselves. There was a very serious game of billiards going on in the other room. I went home at 2 a.m., which was early for nightlife in Buenos Aires. Even though it was late for me, I decided to do some reading before bed. I was reading Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. The story follows an American man named David, who grapples with his sexuality in 1950s Paris. He falls in love with Giovanni, a bartender, but struggles with societal expectations and his own internalized homophobia, ultimately leading to a tragic downfall for both men. As I read, I couldn't help but think about Rebecca and her hasty engagement, and hoped she was making the right decision. It was clear she was adventurous, driven, intelligent, and a woman of action, but these qualities combined were no match for the intoxicating, mind-altering sensations of new love. I was tired the next morning, but I could still go about my day. I'm glad I quit drinking alcohol when I was 23 years old. When I was a child, it seemed like there was something special, almost precious, about the contents inside certain glass bottles. I thought to myself, this valuable liquid must taste delicious and be very good for your health. I never went to parties as a teenager. I never tried to get into bars or nightclubs during my university years in New York City. I did notice the importance of alcohol to my peers. Having the ability to drink large quantities of beer or liquor was an accomplishment. A high tolerance was a mark of strength. After turning 21 and landing my first job, I began to drink every weekend. My understanding was that drinking was a reward. What you drank illustrated your identity and revealed your level of sophistication. There was a thing called happy hour, where drinking at half price was the happiest time of the day. I found this idea both comical and depressing. At work events and business trips, I'd sip champagne and red wine with my colleagues, pretending to love the taste as much as they did. On the weekend, I'd drink beer and the occasional shot of liquor with my friends in crowded bars with sticky floors. My tolerance grew, and I began to understand and even enjoy this numb, happy place where troubles were put on hold. I'd push myself to stay out until 5 a.m. because there was a glamour around partying until dawn, but the truth was, I never felt anything magical about it. Several hangovers left me lying helplessly in bed, as many a bright and sunny Saturday passed me by. Sometimes I was so inebriated I couldn't get myself home, which meant spending the night in a stranger's apartment, waking up nauseous and disoriented. I finally decided to quit alcohol after one too many of these nights. Nowadays, I willingly surrender to my sleepiness at 11:30, sometimes earlier. I wake up feeling energized and eager to start my day with the hours stretching ahead of me like green traffic lights. When I do go out, I drink water and go home feeling perfectly satisfied. 2 a.m. is usually my cutoff. It isn't an arbitrary rule, it's just when my body usually tells me that it's tired and needs to recharge. It goes without saying that staying sober helps keep me safe if I'm out late, especially since I'm constantly dealing with unfamiliar surroundings as a solo female traveler. It also helps financially. It amuses me when a person is surprised, sometimes shocked, when I tell them I don't drink. If they ask why, I simply say I don't like it, and leave it at that. Several months later, as I'm editing these words, Rebecca and Alberto are married. Though I remain skeptical, I must remind myself there was a time when whirlwind romances and quick engagements, followed by lifelong marriage, was the norm. It's important to remember that lasting love and commitment truly does blossom on its own unique timeline, depending on the lovers. Of course, we can express our doubts, but we can also offer our heartfelt congratulations and cheer them on. You never know who you'll meet next in your travels. Before Argentina, I spent 2 months in Peru. Find out what happens in this video, where I meet a friendly Mexican traveler, rekindling her love story and making plans for a new chapter in life.